It's your sister's special day. Of course you'll come, right? From the other end of the line came my mother's buoyant, almost giddy voice. In just 1 week, my younger sister Gina would be getting married. Yet, despite the brightness in her tone, I felt cold drops fall, one after another, deep inside my chest. It wasn't until the day before the ceremony that my mother finally sent me a curt, businesslike message: tomorrow, 11 a.m., at the hotel. That casual treatment said more than anything about my place in this family. Even so, I tried to play the part of the dutiful sister, foolishly so. I forced my work shifts around, bowing my head to several people to secure the time off. I emptied what little savings I had to buy a slightly nicer dress. It was meant to be my small, earnest, and final gesture of goodwill toward my family. My name is Tracy, and I'm 35 years old. I work as a systems engineer for a Forbes 500 company, and I'm well paid. Because of that, I'd been covering my much younger sister's rent ever since she started university. It was for my beloved sister, and also, in part, to ease the burden on my aging parents. But even after Gina graduated, she claimed her salary was too low and insisted she still needed help. I didn't cover everything, but I continued supporting her for another year. I told myself it wasn't good for her in the long run, and I considered stopping, but because she was my sister, I decided to watch over her just for one more year. The only person who seemed genuinely troubled by my situation was my boyfriend, Kevin Morrison. He's 7 years older than me and works in the sales department. Normally quiet and focused on his work, his steady eyes always saw straight through to the exhaustion I carried deep inside. Only with him could I let my guard down. We became a couple one night when I was crushed over a mistake at work, and he told me, "You take on too much alone. Don't force yourself to smile in front of me." Then, awkward but firm, he pulled me into his arms. He knew everything about my family, and still accepted me wholly. When I said, "But they're still my family," he never blamed me, he simply stayed beside me. "I'll listen for as long as it takes for you to decide. You don't have to give me an answer right away," he'd say, patiently supporting me through the painful conflict of not being able to cut ties with such a cruel family. Even on nights when I felt pathetic for lacking the courage to choose, his presence was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. He was my one refuge, my one source of strength. And Gina's fiancé, Ben, was supposedly an elite working for a top-tier company. I felt genuine relief, believing I would finally be freed from paying her rent. Then the wedding day arrived. I stepped nervously into the grand entrance of a luxury hotel, glittering chandeliers overhead. The receptionist noticed me and greeted me with a polite smile. "Congratulations on this special day. May I have your name, please?" "I'm Tracy, Gina's sister." She glanced down at her guest list, tracing it with her finger several times before looking back at me with a troubled expression. "I'm terribly sorry, but I don't see your name listed." At that moment, a shrill voice rang out behind me. "Oh, Tracy, you're early. You're not a guest, so don't just stand there like that you're in the way." I turned to see my mother in an opulent dress, looking down at me as if I were something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. Beside her, my father wore a self-satisfied smile. To them, I wasn't a guest, I was simply a convenient delivery person for a wedding gift. They walked past me, heading toward Gina, who shone at the center of her circle of well-wishers. From that group, my sister suddenly noticed me. Parting the crowd with graceful steps, she approached, her white dress swaying, radiating a glow of happiness. "Let's at least say something nice today. I'll record my sister's happy voice for the memories." In my pocket, I quietly opened the recording app on my phone. It was my final earnest wish as a sister. I waited for her to come close so I could offer my congratulations. Standing beside me with a bright smile, she leaned in as if to share some intimate sisterly secret. But before I could say congratulations, she brought with her the sweet scent of perfume and whispered words as cold as ice into my ear. "Tracy, you made it. Thank you. Oh, and about the rent, we'll keep things the same, all right? I've told Ben that this apartment is something my parents arranged for me. It's about his pride, so I'm counting on you." What the recording app captured wasn't my words of congratulations, but my sister's cruel whisper. For a moment, my breath stopped. The lips that had been ready with a blessing froze, and the sister in front of me looked like a devil wearing a beautiful mask. My mind went blank. I couldn't say a thing in return. It felt like being struck in the head with a hammer, and I could do nothing but stand there. The faint, fragile hope I'd carried until today, the hope of being free, shattered into pieces. Gina gave me one satisfied glance, then turned lightly on her heel and drifted back to her circle of friends, as if nothing had happened. And then, as if calculating the moment when all eyes in the room would turn toward me, she said in a deliberately loud, clear voice amid the festive noise. "Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. My sister just came to drop off her congratulations. She doesn't have a seat." That's right, poor people can always go grab a bite at the diner across the street, can't they? It was the voice of the woman who should have been the happiest bride in the world today. But the words spilling from her lips were cold as a knife cutting deep into my chest. In the sea of joy, those words spread like a dark stain. Beside her, my father and mother didn't scold her for the cruelty. On the contrary, they chuckled, clearly entertained. In my pocket, my phone quietly recorded it all, every ounce of my voiceless despair. This act of coldness was the final, undeniable answer to a question I'd been asking for years. And now I understood my role in this family perfectly. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was nothing but a wallet. Fine, so be it. I forced my frozen facial muscles to move, managing a small nod. I remember how stiff it felt, like the movement of a rusted tin doll. Then I turned on my heel and left the hotel, so full of dazzling light. The sound of their laughter chased me all the way out. My father's, my mother's, my sister's voices warped together under the chandeliers into one ugly, clanging noise that rained down on me. But, strangely, no tears came. It was as if the wiring of my emotions had burned out, leaving my heart eerily still. Instead, somewhere deep inside at the frozen bottom of a lake, I felt something crack. Snap! Maybe it was the sound of the chain, called family, finally breaking apart. I pushed through the hotel's revolving door and went, as instructed, to the diner. There I ordered a childish milkshake and a plate of fries. The brain-numbing sweetness and the sharp saltiness forced some warmth back into my frozen heart. Then I remembered the phone in my pocket and pulled it out. The red recording light was still blinking. The pathetic remnant of my foolish wish to capture my sister's happy voice for memory. With no change in expression, I tapped the red button to stop it. The saved file bore today's date and time, etched in cold digital text. Inside it was no blessing, only my sister's cruel whisper and her public mockery that had pushed me off the cliff. Those few minutes of data were proof of just how empty my 26 years had been. There was no more hesitation. With trembling fingers, I swiped the screen and tapped the name of the one person on my side. When I finally forced the words out, my voice didn't sound like my own. "Kevin, I can't anymore. I can't keep doing this." A sob burst from me like a dam breaking. "It's over. Everything's over." As I haltingly explained, he stayed quiet on the other end, just listening. Then, he said one thing. "I see. You've done enough, Tracy. More than enough. From now on, we fight. I'm with you." That was all I needed. When I got back to my apartment, I sat down at my computer like a ghost. As the first step toward freedom, I opened the auto payment settings for the account that covered Gina's rent. Every month, a fixed sum vanished a few days after payday, that cursed setting. Without a second thought, I clicked cancel. Next, I picked up my phone and blocked my father, my mother, and my sister one by one. Calls blocked. Messages blocked. With a single touch, their voices would no longer reach my world. But that alone wasn't enough. An emotional break wouldn't stop them, they'd simply find another way to leech off me. They might call my company. They might show up at my apartment. What I needed was a calm, deliberate defense, something that would make it impossible for them to ever touch me again. Still, after years of accumulated exhaustion and the shock of yesterday, my body and mind had reached their limit. That night, all I could do was collapse onto my bed. The next day, through Kevin's introduction, I walked up to the heavy wooden door of a law office. It was on the 8th floor of a quiet building at the very end of the hallway. The gold letters on the plaque Owen Law Office gleamed like a gatekeeper testing my resolve. Kevin had told me, she's a lawyer you can trust, someone who's strong in cases like this. I was there to meet Ms. Sandra Owen. Nice to meet you. I'm Sandra Owen. Kevin has told me about your situation. You've been through a lot. Please tell me everything today. Greeting me was a woman with a gentle demeanor, yet sharp intelligence shining in her eyes. Something in her steady, dignified voice began to melt the tight knot in my chest. I set a cardboard box I'd pulled from the back of my closet onto the table. Inside was everything that showed the flow of money over the past few years. Pay stubs, bank books, records of transfers to Gina, screenshots of messages and emails, even half-finished household ledgers. Ms. Owen examined each document carefully, occasionally asking pointed questions. These transfers happen on the same date every month. Was it an automatic payment? Yes, it was set to withdraw 3 days after my payday. Have you ever tried to refuse? I have, but they'd say things like, Gina's meant to fulfill her dreams and you're fine being the one in the background. When I refused, my mother would call me ungrateful. She nodded, quickly jotting down notes. Her precise questions gradually helped me regain my composure. When she'd reviewed everything, she spoke in a firm, clear voice. Tracy, this isn't just a casual loan between family members. This is economic exploitation. Legally, it falls under unjust enrichment. On top of that, we can prove emotional distress. Leaning forward slightly, she met my eyes directly. Tracy, we're going to reclaim everything you're entitled to, not just the money, your time, your peace of mind. This is your right. You don't have to endure it anymore. At that moment, something deep inside me cracked and a new flame ignited. I knew without question that this was the start of my counterattack. With the legal backing now behind me, my resolve became unshakable. Ms. Owen laid out the plan. First, send a certified letter demanding repayment for unjust enrichment. If they didn't comply, we would take it to court. Are you ready to fight? To her question, I nodded firmly. Yes, I'm done running. While I quietly armed myself, cracks were spreading quickly in their world. 3 weeks after that day, Gina's rent went unpaid, and the family apparently realized I was responsible. According to what Kevin heard from a coworker, my parents called my company several times, shouting, "We can't reach our daughter. What's going on?" Naturally, the company refused to get involved in personal matters. The storm reached my fortress a few days later, on a Saturday afternoon. That day, I was at Kevin's apartment. He'd insisted I stay there for safety. My rundown apartment wasn't secure. Then my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Kevin gave me a look, and I answered the speaker. Hello? Tracy, where the hell are you? The rent hasn't been paid. What's going on? It was Gina, shrieking hysterically. She must have called around to relatives until she got my number. What's going on is exactly what it sounds like. I'm not paying anymore. That's all. Don't you dare. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused us? She kept going. Yesterday, the landlord came storming into the house. He yelled, "You're 3 months behind. Pay up now. If you can't, you're out." We were humiliated in front of everyone. At those words, a dry laugh escaped my lips. Trouble? You're telling me that the price of 26 years of my life spent paying for you can be summed up in one word: trouble? My mother's voice cut in. What's that tone? Have you forgotten the debt you owe us for raising you? Debt? So you mean it was an investment keeping me in the house as a convenient source of cash? Now my father's angry roar broke through the line. Tracy, enough of this. Transfer the money right now? Are you defying your parents? Parents? I don't call people who only see me as a wallet parents. The moment I said it, Kevin took the phone from me and spoke in a calm, steady voice. Any further demands will be treated as harassment. All future communication is to go through attorney Sandra Owen. For the record, this call has been recorded. That's all. There was shouting on the other end, but Kevin hung up and powered off my phone. Then he gently wrapped an arm around my shoulders. It's all right. This will make them understand exactly what it means to have a lawyer involved. He was right. After that, direct contact from them stopped. Instead, Ms. Owen received a call from someone claiming to represent them, and a meeting was arranged. A few days later, we sat facing each other in the conference room behind the heavy door of her law office. Beside me were Ms. Owen and Kevin, there as a witness. Across from us sat Gina, my parents, and next to them, a man with a rigid expression, Ben, Gina's husband. The first to speak was Ben. He stood, apologized deeply to me, to Kevin, and to Ms. Owen. Tracy, I want to sincerely apologize for what my wife, Gina, and her family have done to you. I am truly, deeply sorry. The sincerity of his apology surprised me. How much did he know? When he straightened, he began to speak quietly. After our marriage, I began noticing something off about my wife's and her family's attitude toward money. A lifestyle far beyond their income. Whenever I asked where the money came from, I'd get vague answers. Then, when the rent went unpaid, I confronted Gina. At first, she told me her parents were paying it as a wedding gift. I believed her. But now I know that was a lie. The real person paying all along was you, Tracy. His voice trembled with both anger and disappointment. I found the messages on her phone, basically demands for money from you and recordings of her conversations with her parents. When I learned the truth, I was stunned. My marriage had been built on the fragile, ugly foundation of your long years of sacrifice. I am ashamed I didn't see it sooner. That makes me a co-conspirator. He turned to Gina, his tone calm, but with an authority that allowed no argument. To be honest, I've considered divorce. What you've done is inexcusable. Our marriage was a false castle, built on Tracy's sacrifice. Gina gasped, lifting her face, pale and stricken. No, I don't want a divorce. But Ben cut her off and continued. I still have a small part of me that wants to see if you can change. If you are truly willing to start over, stand on your own feet, and make amends for what you've done to Tracy, then I will stand with you and bear that responsibility with you. But if you can't, then our marriage ends here today. It wasn't mercy, it was a final warning. Gina trembled, her tear-streaked face twisted, but she forced herself to look at Ben, then turned to me, pleading again. Please, let me make this right. I'll do anything. I'm so sorry. My parents, however, clung to their pitiful excuses, muttering things like it's a family matter and Tracy wanted to do it, until Ben's piercing glare finally silenced them. Watching this, Ms. Owen let out a quiet sigh and then spoke evenly. I understand. However, Tracy's decision stands. We will be filing a formal lawsuit demanding the return of approximately $150,000 for unjust enrichment. A lawsuit. My father raised his voice. You've got to be kidding. There's no way we can pay that kind of money. Whether you can or cannot will be for the court to decide. Ms. Owen replied calmly, then continued. We will pursue every legal avenue available: wage garnishment, asset seizure. You may even be forced to sell your home. Be prepared. Those words became the final warning for them. The lawsuit proceeded exactly as Ms. Owen had said, methodically, but without mercy. Seated in the hard courtroom bench beside me, she radiated quiet determination. Across from us sat Gina, pale and drawn, Ben, her husband, and my parents, arms crossed with sullen expressions. Ms. Owen murmured coolly as she rose to her feet. Then let's examine the reality of those beautiful bonds, one piece at a time. First, she presented copies of my pay stubs and bank records showing the fixed monthly transfers to Gina's account. Then, side by side, she displayed my household ledger's evidence that I could barely pay my utilities and often scrimped on meals next to Gina's social media posts from the same period, luxury vacations, fine dining. On the courtroom screen, the stark contrast between the two lives was undeniable. This is the result of what the defendants call the plaintiff's kindness. She sacrificed her own life to fund their vanity and excess. Tracy's always been the capable one, so of course she should take care of her sister. My father barked. It's a child's duty to make life easier for their parents. The judge had to cut him off, his views so outdated they sounded absurd in the quiet courtroom. Gina sat trembling, head down beside Ben. She had already begun to understand the weight of her actions during the pretrial talks. But my parents were different. They still acted as though they were the victims, convinced that if they kept resisting, they'd get their way. That stale air broke when Ms. Owen presented her final piece of evidence. Your Honor, we request permission to play an audio file. Permission granted, the noise of a wedding reception filled the silent courtroom. Then came the sugary, yet ice-cold whisper of my sister interrupting my congratulations. By the way, about the rent, please keep paying it like before. I told Ben. Gina let out a short, strangled cry and covered her face with both hands. Ben, hearing the words again, shut his eyes tightly and pressed his lips together in restrained anger. And then, the coup de grace. That's right, poor people can just go to the diner across the street, can't they? Even my mother's gleeful laugh played clearly through the speakers. When the audio stopped, the courtroom was so still that the sound of the opposing lawyer's handkerchief wiping his sweaty forehead seemed loud. Is this what you call beautiful family bonds? No one could answer Ms. Owen's quiet question. Even my parents, who had been clinging to their excuses, went silent, faces drained of color, finally realizing their position. In the end, the court issued a recommendation for settlement. My family was ordered to repay me in installments, marking the complete end of their life of pretension and excess. 6 months later. Tracy, can you cut the carrots a little thinner? Yes, I'll try. Kevin's laugh drifted in from beside me in the kitchen. Those stormy days felt like a distant nightmare. It had been 3 months since we moved in together, tying on matching aprons to make dinner side by side. This simple, ordinary routine was the normal happiness I had longed for. We sat at the table, saying bon appetit together before eating. Watching Kevin take a big bite of meatloaf made me smile. By the way, how are they doing? At Kevin's gentle, probing question, I set my hands still. Through Ms. Owen, I had heard news of their lives. Well, they sold the house. My parents live in a tiny apartment now, arguing all the time. Gina's working with Ben to pay me back and trying to start over. They brought it on themselves, Kevin said quietly. You don't have to feel responsible for their lives anymore. I know. I stared at the steaming meatloaf in front of me. I always wanted moments like this, cooking together, saying, "This is good," while we eat. It was my dream to have something so normal. Kevin set down his fork and gently took my hand. It's not a dream anymore. This is your everyday life now, Tracy. The warmth of his large hand brought tears to my eyes. From now on, I'll be here with you. For all the years you held back, we'll fill them with as many ordinary moments of happiness as we can together. Yes. Through my tears, I managed to smile and nodded. The sunset streamed through the window, bathing us both in a soft glow. It was the light of a future I had built myself, alongside someone who truly supported me. The chain of resentment had ended. A new life, filled with love, was quietly beginning.